So today we're taking a look at the silver ranked recommendations. This is tier 9 and tier 8, and surprising no one, it's going to be basically all tier 9s recommended. The power level jump is significant going from tier 8 to tier 9, so a lot of the tier 8s really can't compete all that easily. DPM, concealment goes up a little bit, getting heals on the cruisers, getting more armor and health on battleships, it's quite a dramatic change. So you're not going to see many tier 8s. Obviously, there's some great tier 8 ships like Atago, Cossack, Kidd, Massachusetts, Lenin. These ships come to mind. And they can be good choices if you are trying to force the enemy team to have a worse tier 8 on their team. I just find personally that I would rather be in the highest tier ship I can be if I'm trying to carry a game out. That's what I've found to be the most reliable way to win, and to have, potentially your best player in yourself in the best ship you possibly can be in. So, with that said, these are going to be my recommendations. Obviously, you can have different ones. That's fine, completely. There's a lot of great ships at tier 9, and there's no way I can put every good ship in a top 5 of each category, right? So, on to destroyers. We're starting at number 5. We've got Benham. Yes. This ship, I know probably not many people have, but if you do have it, you got a pretty insane torpedo boat here. Probably one of the best torpedo boats in the entire game. You get great concealment. You get a lot of torpedoes, let's be honest here. Right? You get 16 torps. And they don't hit particularly hard, but they reload really, really, really quickly. I don't actually own this ship, so all these stats here are stock. So you'd run Survivability Expert to get more hit points. You'd run a lot of torpedo-focused build to get the reload down. I think you can get it close to a minute on the reload for 16 torpedoes, which is pretty insane. They go 10.5 kilometers, and they're reasonably fast. This ship is pretty tough to fight if you're in a cruiser or a battleship. Obviously, destroyers are going to eat this thing up just because of the relatively low gun power. But if you're looking for a good torpedo boat, I would have to say Benham is way up there. Obviously, there's some other great torpedo boats like the European DDs or Japanese DDs, but Benham, for my money, is going to be your best one. But I have it at number 5 because I value gunboats a little bit more in ranked. And speaking of gunboats, here at number 4, we have the Mogador. And this ship basically is just a support destroyer that is going to go in and help to nuke enemy DDs, honestly. The torps aren't bad. It's really fast. It's tough to kill because of the French saturation. And it's just a really strong destroyer killer. That reload boost obviously is very powerful. We all know what French DDs are and what they represent. So seeing it here isn't a big surprise. Of course, the downside is that you can't spot the destroyers yourself, where some of the other gunboat destroyers that are on this list have a little bit better concealment and a little more utility to actually contest the caps by themselves. This one can get pushed off potentially with a stealthy destroyer spotting it and a cruiser just constantly looking at it, right? That's the one weakness of a lone French DD. And but it's still a good pick, and I think you'd do well in something like a Mogador. So at the number 3 spot, we've got the Black and the Fletcher. These two destroyers are both very, very strong. They have good guns for close-range gunfights. They're maneuverable for knife fights. Fletcher, of course, has much better torpedoes than Black. The problem with Black torps is 45 knots. They hit hard, though. The reason I would say probably recommend going with the Black over the Fletcher is just for that radar, right? You get smoke and radar, and contesting caps with something like the Black is going to go a lot better than with the Fletcher. And you're going to bring a lot more utility to your team. Of course, if you see a lot of battleships and less DDs, and it's more about killing the battleships, Fletcher will be better at that. But they're both very, very good destroyers. With decent concealment, decent speed, they're just kind of the good all-round choice. So if you have either one of these, you can't really go wrong with them in my mind. Now for pick number 2 for destroyers, it's got to be Kitakaze. This ship is basically a tier 10, right? Like, let's be honest here. It's more maneuverable than Harugumo. Sure, you're missing a turret, but you get the same torpedo power. You get better concealment. This ship is really, really, really strong. You got a lot of guns. Sure, they don't hit as hard. The alpha's not huge. But you get a ton of DPM just because your reload time is very good. You have decent fire chance, and you have a lot of pen, right? You have 30 millimeters of pen, allowing you to full pen most cruisers with your HE. Not a lot of destroyers are able to do that. So Kitakaze is going to be a good choice if you're looking to do some contesting of caps, but you're really just there to bully whatever goes to the cap. If it's a battleship, shoot it with HE, light fires, torp it, kill it. If it's a cruiser, same thing. You're full penning a cruiser because it can pen 30 millimeters of armor without IFHE. It's a lot to deal with as a cruiser because you can smoke up, you can play from range, and you're hard to hit because you're a small destroyer. And of course, against destroyers, you do have a large amount of HP to deal with. As an enemy DD fighting one of these things. And, 8 guns that fire every 2.5 seconds, it's going to hurt, even if the shell damage isn't too high. So, Kitakaze is going to be one that you'll see me probably play. I really, really, really like this ship. But it's not my number one recommendation, because that belongs to the Friesland. Yes, this ship with no torpedoes is my recommended destroyer for you guys. It is really difficult to fight against one of these things. The gunpowder is probably best at its tier easily. It's insane. And the combination of smoke and hydro allows you to contest caps very aggressively. And I think that this ship is going to be the easiest ship to play to bully other destroyers out of caps. And that is the name of the game, right? It is cap control. That is ranked. That is all you got to do. Is you control the caps for the majority of the game, you're probably going to win, even if you lose more ships. The caps tick pretty hard, and controlling caps is going to be important. Kitakaze is a very close second, though. I debated which one to put higher, but in the end, I think Friesland, with its just insane gunpowder. I don't own this ship yet, but look at the reload base, right? 1.8 seconds. It is insane. Of course, having AA always helps if you ever run into a tier 8 carrier, which is possible in this ranked mode. Friesland is definitely going to be able to handle that best out of all the tier 9 destroyers. So you're allowed to go on your own more, you can flank better, you have a lot more freedom when you have good AA on a destroyer or any ship. You're allowed to play in places people wouldn't expect you. And I think that just the gunpowder and utility that Friesland brings with that hydro, AA, smoke, it's just tough to beat it. So that would be my number one recommended for destroyer. But that's the list. Friesland, Kitakaze, Black or Fletcher, Mogador, and Benham. Obviously, there's some great ships that have been left off this this chart, right? Like there's things like Udaloy, and maybe the Ostergotland, other really good tier 9 destroyers that didn't quite make it. And that's the tough thing about tier 9 is there's a lot of good ships. So if you got one of those, I can definitely see them working. It's not like ships are not going to work if they're not on this list, but these are kind of my power rankings. So now on to the cruisers. At number 5, I've got the Aegir and Siegfried. These two ships are relatively tanky cruisers. Obviously, you have to watch out for the overmatchable bow, but you have 30 millimeter deck, you have 90 millimeter sides. It's pretty tanky if you angle it. You just have to watch you don't get citadeled through the bow. I have a lot of trouble citadeling these through the bow, but when I have played this ship, it does get nuked through the bow. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just aiming incorrectly, but yeah, you do have to watch out for getting citadeled through this bow. But the ship is just really tanky, and the guns are very strong, right? And having one of these on a flank, for example, because they're pretty fast cruisers as well, is just going to be something that is difficult for the enemy team to deal with. I think that having this large HP pool, these good guns, that kind of thing, are going to be what places it in a decent spot here. Not much higher than this, though, because it doesn't bring a lot of utility outside of the main guns and the tankiness, right? That is basically its job, right? As we go higher, we're going to look into ships that are also relatively tanky and bring a lot more utility to the team. That's kind of the main thing holding back these German super cruisers. So that's why these are at number 5. At number 4 on the cruisers, it is the Brindisi. Yes, the Italian Tier 9 cruiser. And that is because SAP is insane against destroyers. Yeah, the ship is a certified destroyer killer. You roll up to a cap with your friendly DD spotting for you, you instantly help your DD win that trade. If you land a single salvo, any destroyer can win a fight with a Brindisi helping them. Even a Unicum versus a Friesland. It's that much power that this ship has. And if you play it right, it'll win you a lot of games because it's tanky, relatively. Obviously, it's not quite on the level of the Venezia, right? Only having 27mm deck, 25 nose, but you do get a bit of 30 here. You know, there's a little bit of 30 that's going to bounce 406s. But the main thing, of course, with a ship like Brindisi is it has that fuel smoke, and that is just the get out of jail free card. You can make, if you're stuck bow in, you can turn out for free. If you're getting focused a lot, you can have a reprieve for nearly a minute. It's very, very difficult to kill one of these things, and this thing is very good at killing destroyers, anything really, battleships, cruisers, everything. SAP is just that good, and that's why it makes it to number 4, even though it's less tanky than the Aegir Siegfried, and it doesn't have as much utility as some of the ones higher up on the list. But it does beat out some of the radar cruisers, in my mind. Things like Buffalo, Seattle, different ships like that. But on to number 3. And it's the Dmitry Donskoi. What? Yes, a silver ship, not another silver ship, not a premium. Crazy, right? Obviously, the strengths of this ship are very strong main guns. These 180s hit very, very hard. And you've got 12-kilometer radar. Let's be honest. That's why you're here. You've got 12-kilometer radar, and you've got guns that can deal with cruisers and destroyers very well. Even burn down battleships quite well. You only got 27mm deck, 25 sides, and a relatively exposed citadel. But that doesn't hold this ship back too much. I've found that when playing this ship, it is very, very good at killing destroyers. You get 12 180mm guns with great arcs, and they do quite a bit of damage each. So I really do think that controlling caps is important in ranked. That's going to be a theme throughout this entire video. And having radar, 12 kilometers of it, is a huge, 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 huge benefit to your team. So that's why the Donskoi gets the number 3 spot. In spot 2, it's another Russian cruiser. It's the Riga. And that is because it's just tankier. I mean, you got some pretty nuts armor here. 35mm. It's going to be bouncing every battleship on my entire list. You got Icebreaker. This ship can actually sit bow into things. The guns are very strong with the AP. Yes, you don't quite have the radar duration that the Donskoi has, but you still have 12-kilometer radar. It forces DDs off caps. It pressures destroyers. It allows your DDs to move up and take ground. And having a tankier ship with that radar, I think brings more value to the team. So that's where the Riga sits at number 2. And as a kind of side note, the Kronstadt also fits here. Very tanky, 12-kilometer radar. The guns are a little wonky on Kronstadt. The dispersion can kind of screw you over every once in a while, but very tanky, very good at getting up close to caps and helping your destroyers contest it with radar, allowing them to smoke up and shoot out of their smoke, while the enemy DD is spotted with the radar. So that's number 2 on the list. And of course, at number 1, we all know, it's the Alaska. It just has to be. You've got very accurate, big 305mm guns. You got a lot of HP. You got great armor. You've got a long duration 10-kilometer radar. You get decent concealment. AP and HE is amazing. This ship is, I would say, a tier 10 level. If you're looking at power levels, would you rather play an Alaska in tier 10 games or a Zhao in tier 10 games? Keep in mind, Alaska has more range, more HP, slightly worse concealment, and way more HP. Like that, Zhao has 40k HP. This thing has 60. It's a tier lower. I know Zhao's not the best thing to compare to because it's a relatively weak tier 10 cruiser, but still, this Alaska is just that good. And that's why it gets to the number 1 spot. So if you've gotten Alaska, I think you're well set to do well in ranked. That's the cruiser list. So we've got the Aegir and Siegfried at number 5, Brindisi at 4, Donskoi at 3, Riga and Kronstadt at 2, and the Alaska in first place. And now for the battleships, the last part here. We've got at spot 5, the Jean Bart. What? I'm sure a lot of people would put this way higher. And the reason I don't think Jean Bart, or Alsace for that matter, I've got both here at slot 5, Alsace and Jean Bart. The reason they don't end up higher is they're just covered in 32 millimeters of armor. You just get burnt alive by cruisers. Some of the destroyers even can pen 32. Kitakaze with IFHE, for example. Battleships at this tier definitely overmatch you, right? There's Musashi that you have to worry about. Little spoilers for later on the list, by the way. Surprising no one. But that's the main issue, right? And especially for Jean Bart, you have a low HP pool for tier 9. 69,000 HP. That's like tier 8 level HP. And yes, you do get good guns with a fast reload and a reload booster, and you got some decent AA. You're pretty fast. You got decent concealment. But you're not tanky enough to do that final push. I find so often in ranked as a battleship player, to win out those really close games, you do have to push in late game and really take it to the enemy team and force that win. And I just don't believe that a ship covered in 32 millimeters of armor is going to be able to do that as easily. So that's why the Alsace and the Jean Bart rank at number 5. At number 4, we've got some pretty tanky battleships. I couldn't decide where to rank a lot of these battleships because their power level to me is all very similar. But at number 4, we've got the Lepanto, the Iowa, and the Izumo. These are all very, very strong battleships. They're all very tanky. Obviously, the Iowa and the Izumo have some better gun power over the Lepanto. But the Lepanto has better survivability and ability to push with its fuel smoke, right? It's a tough choice. But they're all very strong battleships. You can't really go wrong with any of these three. Obviously, with Izumo being picked, the Baji as well fits in this category. There's a lot here at number 4, and that's because there's a lot of pretty good, decent tier 9 battleships that are relatively tanky and have decent guns. Now here at number 3, we've got the Sovietsky Soyuz, naval legend. And really it comes down to the armor. Let's be honest here. This ship is very, very, very hard to kill. Look at this armor, man. The superstructure is tiny. You got the consumable damage controls, meaning fires aren't going to do that much to you. You can push a Sovietsky Soyuz almost anywhere and it's going to be good, right? Even against something like a Musashi, you angle it like this. They can't get through this plate. They'll just bounce off at this angle. The overmatch here, but it just kind of passes through. It's just a nightmare to deal with a Sovietsky Soyuz. It takes forever to kill one with even amazing focus fire. Large amount of hit points, good guns, right? 406s are good for this tier, decent range, 19 kilometers. It's enough for tier 9. The guns obviously aren't that amazing. They're a little bit worse, I would say, than the Lepanto, Iowa, and Izumo. But the armor, the ability to just sit there and tank, that is the Soyuz's job, and that's why I've got it at number 3. At number 2, we've got the 2 premium American battleships, the Missouri and the Georgia. Of course, we all know Missouri. It's an Iowa with a slightly worse heel now, but with radar. And bringing radar on a battleship that is tanky is a massive bonus for any team. So that's why I've got it at number 2, the utility, on top of an already decent battleship, right? We've got Iowa down in slot 4, right? I think adding a radar to that, any of those ships would bring it up to top 1 or 2, right? So that's why the Missouri is here. And of course, the Georgia is just an amazing ship, right? It's fast, its guns overmatch a lot of cruisers nowadays. It's got very accurate guns. It's got the secondaries of a Massachusetts on it. It's a very tough ship to deal with because it can flank so quickly. Just look at that maximum speed on top of a speed boost. It nearly goes 40 knots, and it's a pain to deal with on a flank. And with the fast-acting heals that it gets, just like Massachusetts and Ohio, it's going to be doing a lot of damage. The reason it's not number one, though, for me, it's this superstructure. Look at how gigantic it is. I think it's possibly the biggest superstructure in the game. It just stretches on forever. So you angle your ship like this, enemy battleships just shoot right in here. And you're basically guaranteed full pens with how far the shell sticks in the superstructure. You're pretty much guaranteed full pens. So the problem with Georgia, of course, you eat those 10 to 20k salvos through your superstructure that doesn't even touch this relatively good armor, I would say. 38, 32 nose. It's good armor. The problem is the superstructure. And that's really what's holding Georgia back here. So that's why Missouri and Georgia are number 2. And at the number 1 spot in a battleship, I'm sure you can't guess. Yeah, it's the Yamato at tier 10. Oh, wait. No. They put the Yamato at tier 9 and called it a Musashi? That's weird. Yeah. It's a Yamato. Let's be honest. I can't believe they put a Yamato at tier 9. like straight up, it's 97,000 HP. We thought Soyuz was good with 88,000. This nearly has 10k more. Torpedo reduction, really good. The armor is decent for this tier. You're not getting overmatched by anything other than other Musashis, so your Citadel is relatively safe, even though it's high above the water, if you just go bow into people. This ship is just very strong. You're overmatching other battleships. It's very, very good. Of course, the dispersion being 1.8 sigma instead of 2.1 means the dispersion can get a little wonky sometimes, but you still have the same values on the dispersion as Yamato. Your sigma is just a little worse. As a little bonus, compared to Yamato, you actually have a less hittable superstructure. Yamato has superstructure that juts out here along the side of the ship, and Musashi doesn't. So it's actually harder to deal HE damage to a Musashi than it is to a Yamato, which is kind of funny actually, considering it's a tier lower. That's the battleship list. Not surprising anyone. Musashi is at slot 1. So there it is. Alsace and Jean Bart tier 5, or slot 5. I've got them. And at the 4th spot, we got Lepanto, Iowa, and Izumo. Slot 3, Soyuz, and of course the premium Soyuz. I forget what that one's called. It basically just gets Iowa dispersion, I believe, for only retaining the A hull of Soyuz. So kind of a trade-off there, but they could both go number 3. Slot 2, of course, Missouri and Georgia. Very, very strong ships. And at slot 1, Musashi. You got to put the tier 10s at slot 1, right? Alaska and Musashi both top in the charts for their respective categories. Pretty crazy, but that is my recommendations for Silver League rank this time. It's tier 9 and tier 8. Unsurprisingly, no tier 8s on this list. Some of them were close to making it in the 5th spot, but none of them really brought enough to the table to the point where I would actually recommend that you play them. I think you should play the best ship you can possibly play if you're going for the fastest wins and rank out possible. That said, if you're enjoying any of the other ships at these tiers in ranked, I think you should play those. Ranked is an opportunity to have fun. It doesn't matter, right? There's no stats for ranked that people track. It's just an opportunity to go in, have some fun in a 7 versus 7. A different experience than the 12v12 we usually get. I actually really enjoy it. 7v7 opens up a lot of opportunities for flanking, closer quarters engagements, a little more team play potentially if you get good teammates. Obviously, you can't rely on that. But yeah, rank can be a lot of fun, and if you're not just try-harding all the time, you can have a great time in any ship, really, honestly. So that's my recommendations, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe give you something to think about. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.